What's going on, YouTube? I am Prepper Princess, the author of Living on Almost Nothing. If you are interested in purchasing my book, I'll leave a link down in the description box below. We are seeing some changes in society, not just here in the United States, but pretty much everywhere. And I am quite honestly shocked that the government has not noticed or seen what's going on. I know they live behind their gated communities with their community pools and gym equipment and their golf carts. I don't know. So if anybody from the government is watching, good for you. But here's the deal, is that for a long time, 50 plus years, the American dream was a 3-bed, 2-bath on a quarter acre in a city or town. And I think that YouTube has sort of romanticized it quite a bit and made it much more public about different ways that people, I don't think that they want to live this way, but they're forced to live this way. I'll give you a couple of examples. RV living. I find that maybe 10 or 15% of the people who do live an RV nomadic lifestyle, that is the lifestyle that they would choose if they had unlimited options, right? But Social Security, not many people save up for retirement and they're forced to live on a very small amount of Social Security. There's also the tiny house movement. People are doing mobile homes, single wides, things like that. Now, the only problem that I have with RV living and tiny house living is a couple of things. Number one is that typically the RVs and the tiny homes are not on your own property. And the government, our friends, good old government, are making it harder and harder for people to legally. So if you want land and you want to live in your RV, you can't. You're not allowed. Which is the dumbest thing ever. It's your property. But as long as you're not hoarding or causing rodents and bugs and infestations of stuff or stuff like that, not hurting your neighbors, keeping your property in good condition, I don't see why you can't live however the heck you want. I mean, if you want to live in a straw bale house that you built yourself with a composting toilet and rain catchment, it's your life, it's your property. Good for you. You should be able to do it, but the government is making it more and more difficult to do that. For instance, I remember in Arizona, you could have an RV parked on 1 acre of your own property for up to 2 weeks. So if you wanted to live in an RV off grid, you have to have at least 2 acres. And let's say your acreage is right here in the middle of the screen, right? So you could park here for 2 weeks and then you'd have to move 10 feet over to the other acre for 2 weeks and then move 10 feet back, which is the dumbest thing ever. But that's pretty much the only loophole that you've got. If it is a permanent residence, you have to have septic installed, which is around $10,000. And I believe that in certain areas you have to have electricity. It's ridiculous. People should be able to live the way that they want for the most part, as long as they're keeping up their property, not having garbage strewn all over the place. And you know what I mean? Common sense. And RVs, which I think is a good point, is that they are so cheap. They're cheaper than an e-bike. I'm serious. You can get a really nice RV, move-in ready condition, nothing wrong with it, for $2,000 now. I just saw one for I think it was $2,100, a 25-foot thing, trailer. I don't know if you call it a trailer or an RV, because an RV is the one I think is with the motor, and the trailer is the one that you tow behind with a truck. So it was a trailer. So really great. Super cheap. They're cheaper than used cars. They're cheaper than an e-bike. They're cheaper than some scooters. It's crazy. You can essentially buy a house for $2,800, but you can't legally park it anywhere. So that's the problem that I have with RVs. Same thing with tiny homes. There's a lot of rules and regulations, and people spend a ton. I've seen so many people spend so much on these tiny homes that they literally could have purchased a house for what they spent on the tiny homes that they built from scratch, custom made, all this stuff. So they'll have $100,000 into a tiny home, but you can move to certain parts of the country: Kentucky, Georgia, Idaho, North and South Carolina, Indiana, Ohio. There's tons of places there where you can get a house for $100,000. And I understand maybe you want to move around with it, but if you want, it's just a money waster to me. And the resale value of tiny homes is awful. They don't sell for nearly half of what you put into them. Really bad. It's a very, very niche-y type thing, and not everybody is into that type of niche. And a lot of cities, counties, and stuff like that have a minimum requirement of having a home be 400 square feet, 20 by 20. You're probably going to spend the same amount on 200 square feet as you would on 400 square feet while you're building, or pretty close to it. So might as well go for the 400 square feet. One of the things that I hear a lot of people talking about is, depending on how the election goes, which is coming up very soon here, is that if Kamala Harris wins, one of her ideas is to tax people on unrealized capital gains. I personally believe that will completely collapse the economy, because there's no reason to become rich anymore. And then it just completely overnight pretty much turns into socialism. Personally, if I was taxed on unrealized capital gains, I would very seriously look into moving to another country. Because if I can't make money off of my house, if I can't make money off of my investments, there's no way I can make any money. So it's time for me to go. Because all I would be doing would be relying on the government for the rest of my life. I would absolutely quit working and just go on welfare if that were the case. Or whatever it is. But that's not so anyway, in that event, if Kamala Harris were to win president and if that were to somehow pass, I don't know how that could possibly pass. But if that were to pass, pretty much the only option that you have would be a mobile home on an acre of land, probably a single wide. And the reason for that, and it would have to be an older single wide too, because the reason for that is property tax. So when you have a mobile home, and if it's old enough, you're always paying for taxes based on the value of the home as well as the value of the land. If you have a mobile home that's old enough, you can't be taxed on that. So for instance, I'm taxed on a $200,000 house. Well, the mobile home is taxed on $0. If you bought an acre of land for $10,000, you would only be paying property taxes on the $10,000 and not the home that you're living in, if that makes sense. So if there's all these unrealized capital gains, that would be the only option. And the problem with that being is that if the tax assessor comes around and sees that you've made improvements to the property, the land value goes up. So I think that it would force a lot of people to not keep up their properties, not take care of their properties, because they're afraid of the tax man coming and raising their property tax, which I would essentially call that raising their rent. So it would be a lot of unkempt single wides on property, and I just think it would be a really, really bad policy. But traditional housing and lifestyles are slowly vanishing because they're becoming unaffordable. You're looking at a lot of people from one-bedroom apartments that are saying, forget it, I can't afford $2,500 a month. I'd rather just live in my van for free. And a lot of people do that. And a lot of people do it pretty smart. They've got a Planet Fitness membership gym membership where they can go and work out and take a shower. So hygiene is already taken care of. They have little mini fridges in their vans, so they've got food available. Cooking you can do on the tailgate of your van. It's a whole thing. It's a lifestyle, but unfortunately, I would say that only 5 to 10% of people that are living that lifestyle are doing it because they want to. The other 90 to 95% of people are doing it because they have to. And I think that The government can't really do much about privately owned property, about landlords and things like that. But I think that what they can do is they can start enacting more laws. And again, same thing with corporate business. They can't go into a personal or LLC or corporate business and tell them they have to pay their employees more. They can't do that. But what they can do is make it easier on the people. Making it easy on the people is offering things. They already do it through food stamps, subsidized housing, free childcare, free meals for children at schools. But we need to really, really take a look at free healthcare for people. I pay $504 a month for healthcare out of pocket because I'm self-employed. And most people actually do pay $300, $400, $500 a month per person, but it's automatically deducted from their paychecks because their company pays a portion of it. So it's something that has been tried, tested, failed. And a problem with that is that about 40 to 50% of our GDP is because of medical. So I don't think that that's ever going to happen either. And as we continue to press forward, the line between the rich and the poor is pretty much like the middle class is pretty much gone. And now it's either you're rich or you're poor. The problem is that the majority of people are poor. There's very few, there's a few rich people, but most are poor. It would be nice if the middle class is going to be gone. It would be nice to be 50-50, 50% rich, 50% poor. But it sure does seem like 90 to 95% poor, 5 to 10% rich. And unfortunately, we have had to drastically change our lifestyles in order to keep up with this. And it's not in the right direction. Do what you can with what you've got. Prepper Princess out.
Funeral or memorial service with the weight of that. That's how people appeared. They were very, very grieving, very, despondent. Now, when I ran into him, I asked him if he knew what was going on in the world, and this is exactly what he said to me.
Get her, Rocky.
That the end was coming again,
Get her, Rocky.
and that he had not prepared for the time.
Get her, mister.
At this statement,
Get her, mister. You just gonna let her win? Again? You're just going to let her win? Get her, Rocky. Get her, Rocky.
then he began immediately to tell me God's plan for man's salvation. He carefully reached in his back pocket like this and looked around over both of his shoulders to see as though